pumper trucks.
Hi, Taryn Krista for the record. I did submit to you an agenda item which is fairly lengthy, just to provide the commissioners and anybody that's interested. Yes, sir.
Ms. Krista, while you're over there by yourself, is it possible for you to take your mask down? You're sounding very muffled.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I get in the habit of wearing it, but thank you. So I did an agenda item that I submitted to the board to just kind of lay out the history of our fire rescue services and kind of the thought process of the board. And given the fact that I've been here since 1987, I was actually part of the transition, if you will, from when we had a BLS, which is basic life support, separate from fire rescue. Yes, sir.
But you were also an intern and you were 12.
Yeah, I started at 12, as Commissioner Smith said. So the thought process back in 1997 was that we should bring all of those pieces together and have one system for the county, that just because you live in the northern area or the southern area or western area, you should get the same level of service as all the residents. And therefore, it was established that we would pay for this through ad valorem taxes with, we established a municipal service taxing unit, which is an MSTU, for the unincorporated area of Martin County specifically. And so we started the taxation, if you will, of our residents to provide the necessary funding for those fire rescue services. And we combined ALS and BLS with fire rescue. Our personnel became dual certified. We no longer had a separation between fire and EMS. Our employees became emergency medical technicians, as well as they go through fire school, so they can do dual purpose. And then we also increased our level of service by bringing in paramedics, and we're proud to say that we send paramedics on every call. So we provide that higher level of service, if you will, to our residents in Martin County. So when we look at where we are, you did get a letter from the mayor, and I see Mayor Janet Hernandez is here with Howard Brown, their village manager, as well as Susan Gibbs Thomas. And if I missed anybody that I didn't see come in, I apologize. So she sent a letter, Mayor Hernandez sent a letter to Chair asking if the board would be willing to negotiate the village's ad valorem taxes contribution to our fire rescue MSTU. So, and they want a response by tomorrow. So I had done the agenda item. It took me at least a week to put that together. Our agenda is structured in such a way that I had to get that to our agenda team 3 weeks in advance, so we put it on for today's meeting. So, as I said, these MSTUs were created not only for fire rescue, but we also did them for road maintenance, we also did them for stormwater maintenance, and we also did them for park maintenance, with the same thought process that the residents should all have the same level of service regardless of where they live. Prior to the MSTUs being created for these services, some commissioners would have parks that were a little bit more pristine because they would put their MSTU, their district money, into those facilities, whereas another commissioner may not have enough resources. Their tax base may not have been significant enough because, as you know, your districts are based on population, not tax base. So you could have a highly concentrated populated area that may not have the tax base that another individual could have by having a much more expansive district, because we need to reach out. Like Commissioner Jenkins, when we redistrict last time, he goes all the way from Hope Sound way out to Indiantown and back again. And the reason his district is so expansive is because we had to capture that population. So his tax base can be almost double of what Commissioner Hetherington may have, or Commissioner Hurd may have, or Commissioner Campy, or Commissioner Smith, just given the area. So because of that dynamic, again, the commissioners wanted a more holistic approach to how we provide funding for these services and treat all of our residents equally. So can a municipality participate in our MSTU? Yes, they can. The town of Ocean Breeze passed an ordinance to be part of our fire MSTU, as did the village. So when the property appraiser provides you with her tax base on June 1 and July 1, it includes the tax base of those two municipalities. So when we're calculating the fire rescue MSTU millage rate, it includes those tax bases already. So we think of ourselves, Martin County, we act like a big municipality, if you will, because we provide so many of these services that normally you would have a county of our size. We might have more than 5 municipalities. You might have double that. You look at other areas, Broward County, only 2% of Broward County is unincorporated. The rest of it is municipalities. So we operate 87% of the services that we provide are to the residents outside of the municipalities. With fire rescue included, it goes up a little bit to 88%. So we are the taxing authority, as I said. We determine what the millage rate is, we levy the taxes, we collect those taxes, and then we operate those services, and they get approved through your budget process. And that millage rate is applied to across the board. So you have circumstances where if you have a home that's valued higher than another home, even though you might be next door to one another, you're both a 3-2, let's say, you're both on a quarter-acre lot, and this one individual bought their home in 2 years ago, and the other individual's been there since 1990, the one from 1990 is going to be paying less because they've had the advantage of being homestead over those that years of time. But yet when they dial 911, they get the same complement of services, they get the same response as the person next door who could be paying, and most likely is paying a greater amount into the fire rescue MSTU. So when we look at our station operations, because we've heard from some folks that, well, I don't get it. Your budget's X and you divide it by 11 stations. Therefore, everybody should just contribute that dollar amount. Well, it doesn't work that way. We have Fire Rescue Administration. You have Chief Chinchula here with Matt Resch, our finance guru. And then we also have Kevin Parks, who was a captain out at Indiantown. And Kevin most recently has decided to come up and try his expertise at administration. So we're going to see how that works out for him. But you have that administration cost. You also have the cost of legal support, my support, payroll, the various things. So they do an indirect cost study, and you have to layer those expenses in there. And so we include those in the fund so that we can capture those expenses. You have their operations, fleet maintenance. Matt Resch, he oversees the fleet maintenance portion, and so we do that. We have all of their capital. We have your CIP that you'll be looking at later today, includes the replacement of apparatus. We also have in our capital program the replacement or renovations to the station costs. This year, as you know, we're moving forward with 4 stations being renovated, which it's time to do that, plus a training facility. So we continue to move forward with those large expenditures. So out in Indiantown, specifically, they have a dedicated station. You heard a woman speak this morning about her concern over tropical farms being pulled off and going out to Indiantown, and then they had a structure fire in Foxwood, and getting that response. So they have more personnel at Station 24, which is the Indiantown station. They have 7 per shift. Most of our stations have 5, unless we have a need that's been where we have a busier station. We might upstaff that, put another apparatus there and additional staff. We also have backup. These move-ups occur, as you heard that woman speak this morning. The tropical farms had to go out to Indiantown to address another event. And so when they do that, we start staging those other apparatuses up so that we can still maintain our response time. And then their industry standard for a structure fire is 2 fire engines, a ladder, and 15 personnel. So when you think about having the ability to pull on 15 personnel when there's a structure fire, where do you get them from? And again, it's from those other stations that we have. So there's also 2 ambulances out there. There's additional apparatus. The 2 brush trucks, they're out there because we're concerned about the water pressure and flow should there be an event and require the use of hydrants. So we do have those trucks out there in the tanker. We also have, we're very concerned about the insurance services office, ISO. You heard about that from some of the emails that you received. That's based on a travel distance. Again, that ISO rating is the way it is because of Martin County's complement of services that we're able to provide. So we look at our industry standards, we look at all the things that go into response, and it's not just fire, it's emergency services. I think over 85% of our calls are medical. So having that expertise, having those paramedics, having those individuals that can respond, having the individuals that can treat patients while they're being transported to the hospital is imperative to the services that we provide. So the millage rate is determined by how much ad valorem is needed to balance that fund. We have other fees. We have these ambulance transport fees. I know when somebody's transported, your insurance nine times out of 10, or whatever your health insurance is billed, and they pay for that ambulance fee. We also, through Matt Resch's ingenuity, he has worked on these PEMT funds that you've heard him talk about. We've been successful in getting over $500,000 coming in with those. We also have a lot of grants. You approve tons of grants on your agendas every single meeting. And those, we put all those into our fund, and then whatever is left that needs to be funded with ad valorem, we then use that ad valorem, and that establishes your millage rate. So the village has, for a while now, been telling us that they think they pay too much, which I understand that comment, although I don't believe that there's an understanding of the tax system and that's the way we fund fire rescue. So we got roughly this year, based on their tax base, a little over $5.3 million is paid into the fund from the tax base of the Village of Indiantown. Recognizing that 95.4% of those taxable values are from industrial and commercial. And so when you look at what the residential portion is, it's in the $200,000 range. And I know my conversations with the individuals that have large industrial site out there are very concerned because we have had to respond to major incidents out there. And having the extrication devices, having the additional hazmat, having all the personnel that train with them, that understand that if there's an incident, this is what we're going to be faced with, is paramount to their operation and their insurance requirements. So we had an ordinance. Through our research, we found the ordinance from 1997 that is pretty clear. It lays out, again, it was developed so that there would be a holistic approach to how we fund fire rescue, and there'd be a holistic approach to how we provide services to all the residents in Martin County. And so everybody receives the same level of service, but we pay for it through ad valorem taxes. And the millage rate is the millage rate. It's given to everybody across the board. So the village did have a meeting on the 27th. They have a consultant that had provided them with options. And the presentation that I got, which was done just the beginning of this year, unfortunately had numbers that were a few years stale. So when you actually updated those numbers and put the accurate numbers in there, we proved to be a less expensive alternative for the village residents and the village, those individuals that are in the unincorporated area of western Martin County. So their option was number 4, which you heard someone speak to it today. It was a hybrid of contracted services and paid personnel. We believe that it will be a reduced level of service. It did not include any costs for Martin County to provide any kind of backup, which they would have to pay us for. So if we're going to respond or be expected to respond, should their whatever they've got out there is being transporting a patient or called to another scene, we would have to back up, but there's a cost to that, and they would have to pay for that. So they're talking about possibly putting us on notice next year, which would be October 2022, and we're going through the process now, Chief and his staff, looking at the call load for Station 24. We're trying to decide whether, we can stay in the station that we have out there. There's absolutely no reason why we can't stay there. but we want to strategically place ourselves where we're going to have the higher call load, if you will, to that unincorporated area. And then if this goes forward, the county will no longer be responsible for the tangible personal property grant that we currently have with FP&L for the fire MSTU portion. You remember when they came to us and asked for that rebate, it included the countywide taxes as well as the fire MSTU, and they get a 50% reduction on that fire MSTU. So that would go away, and this year it was $780,000 roughly. So in my conversations with the village manager, it was communicated to us that we provide urban level of service to the residents of Martin County, and that Indiantown is really a rural area, and so the services could be more of a rural nature. When my conversations with Chief on this, he says, yeah, but the population is concentrated. It's more like an urban area. So when you look at where it's like the city of Stewart. Your residents are concentrated into a general area. So it's not rural. It's an urban response that they need. And we've heard from residents. They're very concerned. We understand. We appreciate the fact that they like the service that they get going into this incorporation. It was never initially discussed that they would take over fire rescue. And so I had this agenda item. I did provide it to the village manager back on the 26th of March. As we understand, it was never really distributed to the council members, and Commissioner Jenkins took it upon himself to do that. So they had a meeting on this past Saturday. I have no idea what the dialogue was, nor have I circled back around to listen to that meeting. So in conclusion, we're prepared if they place us on notice. I've been preparing for this for a couple years, so we've been setting aside our fund balance as we move forward, getting our reserves healthy in that fund so that we would not have a major impact or have to raise our millage rate. We believe, in consultation with legal, that the ordinance is pretty clear. Could the board change the ordinance? Absolutely. But what would be the basis for that? As Commissioner Jenkins has communicated in his meetings with the council, why should the residents of Hobe Sound pay more because the village of Indiantown is paying less, yet they have a higher level of service out there? So how do you convey that to your constituents? And so we will continue to address the western area, but we will need those agreements that if we're going to be expected to back them up, that we have something in place to cover our expenses. So, my early conversations with the village manager, I was trying to decide whether or not there was anything that we could do. And in consultation with Matt Resch, we talked about maybe we could offer them the ambulance fees that are collected in that area. And so we were looking at that, and that was a couple $100,000. And then I thought, well, we probably could tap into some of the other fees, like the PEMT fees or something else like that. Maybe we could garner about $500,000 to offer. And when I made that offer to the village manager, it was communicated back to me that that was not enough, that they were looking for about 3 times that, which would be about $1.5 million, which, for me, coming from